Sex trafficking is being ignored by the FBI. It seems unfathomable. Here with the story is Brandon Darby, a former liberal activist and FBI informant. Brandon, of course, thanks so much for being here. This story is, obviously, this is just coming out now. And when I first read this story and became acquainted with all of the, the facts that you came out with, I was really shocked. I mean, you've been working with the FBI for, what, 8 months now with human trafficking cases. What is it that you have discovered?
Well, what I discovered is that there's a number of issues with the DOJ as a whole, that they discourage each other, and the system that they have in place discourages agents from investigating human trafficking cases, in particular sex trafficking of minors.
Right. So there were cases presented to the FBI
54
cases
in Texas alone.
Oh, wow.
That I presented to the FBI with a number of reputable advocates for the victims, and they ultimately didn't do anything. And one of the cases involved a 16-year-old minor, and the FBI still didn't do anything. And that's where I guess
it involved a 16-year-old minor.
That's correct, a female. And I was present when a source report, which is basically an affidavit, or it's a witness statement, it's evidence.
Right.
So I was present when a source report was written that identified a 16-year-old minor. And 7.5 months later, at the time I wrote the story, and I came forward, the FBI had not acted, which could only mean, because of their rules, that someone within the FBI actually changed the word minor, took the word minor out of the report, because they're required to act immediately if a child is involved.
Why would they do that? I mean, if they're working to stop human trafficking cases, and here you have, I mean, you have clearly a minor's involved, multiple minors are involved, why would they stop to act?
Well, I think they're complicated investigations. I think that the Holder Justice Department has gone to a point-based promotional system. The FBI has done the same thing, and so a special agent in charge, of a division might not like a complicated investigation, and they all get promoted. The leadership gets promoted more easily, if things are simple. John shot Paul rather than John stole Paul's gun and then committed a crime. This is a thing that goes on, and so in this particular case, it took months, because the FBI agent I worked with, I was an informant in this case, and the FBI agent I worked with obviously can't come forward on his own, because the Department of Justice does not allow. They say that the Whistleblower Protection Act does not apply to the people under their purview and the people working in the DOJ, and that's what we're seeing with the ATF and Fast and Furious right now.
So nobody comes forward.
So no one can come forward. So the solution was to put this out and to call upon Congress to ask the federal agent, I've identified as Special Agent X, to come forward, to pull him forward and ask him what the truth is, so that the truth will come out and that person would still have a career and not be ruined for doing the right thing.
To think that people could be penalized, they could be punished because they're trying to save children from a human trafficking organization.
Correct.
That I cannot believe that's happening in the United States right now.
It is.
I mean, that's something that you hear about in third world countries. I mean, this is the US of A. We're not supposed to have stuff like this that happens, but yet here you are telling us this.
Right. There's the significant issue here is what that shows at the point that leadership within the FBI is willing to change source reports, take evidence away, so that they don't have to investigate something. That is indicative of a culture, of an organizational culture it's not a good thing. It's horrible. It's horrible for the children that I've worked to protect, and it's horrible for the children that the agents work to protect. There's a difference here between the agents who wear their shoes to work, their tennis shoes, and they hit the streets and work the streets, the law enforcement officers and their politically appointed leadership and their executive managers within the FBI. There's a big difference. And so in support of those guys and in support of children, we do need congressional leaders to come forward and do something about this case.
Have you heard anything, and I know the story is still it's still relatively new. It's been, what, barely a week since it first came out. Have you heard anything yet in response to this? I've
talked with a number of congressional leaders, and they're looking into what they can do about it. I also spoke with Special Agent X, and I called him, and he said, "Brandon, wow." And I said, "I know." I said, "I know that that's against the the code to do what I did. And I said, I hope you're not upset with me. And I said, my intentions are to get a congressional leader to pull you before Congress and ask you what you know, and I hope that you'll do the right thing and tell the truth. And he said, first off, I'm never going to be upset with you, Brandon, for saying the truth, and that's what you're doing. And secondly, of course, if I'm pulled before Congress and I'm given an opportunity legally, without ruining my career, to speak truth, I will speak truth. And so I feel very confident that the men and women of the Bureau are going to take a stance against their politically appointed leadership's corruption, and I feel very confident that congressional leaders will come forward and do the same.
And this is something that we keep seeing repeated, not just with the case of human trafficking, but it seems that the politics of the FBI preventing agents like the one that you're telling me about right now from doing the right thing and from speaking truth to power because they're afraid they'll be penalized. It's too uncomfortable for, as you said, the folks with the shiny shoes and all that stuff in the offices.
Right, it's very uncomfortable. So there's a culture of corruption, and there's actually, you know, there's so much to this, but there's a culture of corruption in the leadership of the FBI, and there's a culture of corruption in the leadership of the DOJ as a whole, and it needs to be addressed. And they have it set up right now where everything can only be addressed internally, and that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate in the United States of America. That's not how we do business here.
No, that's not how we do business here, and we definitely don't let children suffer while we play politics within the FBI. Well, this story is just unbelievable. How many children are still, do you think, out involved in this?
I worked in a limited area. I worked in Texas.
So this is just in Texas.
Just Texas. Yeah, just Texas alone.
I can't imagine what it would be. 54 in Texas. I can't imagine. I mean, here we have 49 other states.
Yeah, it's horrible, and it's a horrible situation. And so kind of nationwide, what has occurred is that generally the groups who work with human trafficking victims feel very frustrated.
Right.
So my work into this, I set out as an investigation to figure out what the problems were and how, as citizens, we could resolve those problems, what the stoppages were, the clogs in the system. And so I talked with U.S. Attorney's Office, folks from the U.S. Attorney's Office, AUSAs, federal agents, analysts, law enforcement from every walk of the field, and what I've determined is that it's just simply a culture where the U.S. Attorney's Office doesn't want to take cases.
It's a culture of corruption.
Culture of corruption.
I so appreciate your work on this story and fighting to get the story out here. Keep it up, and I know we're going to be following up with you with any developments that we may get out of this. Brandon, thank you so much. I appreciate it.